There is a clay pot sitting on a shelf in a plain farmhouse. No filter cartridge, no power cord, no monthly bill, just fired earth, dripping clean water into a sealed vessel below. One pot. That is the entire system. And here is the number that stopped me cold: 99.88%. That is the documented pathogen removal rate, verified in humanitarian field testing across 30 countries. Not a lab result. Real families, real water. Right now, the average American household spends over $1,000 a year on bottled water. This pot costs $4. That gap is not an accident. Here's the part that nobody tells you. The number that matters most in this story is not $4. It is $2,185. Hold that number. You are going to need it. Long before any of this made sense to me, I was looking at something much simpler. A shelf. A clay vessel the color of dry riverbed, rough to the touch, heavier than it looks. Below it, a sealed container with a small metal tap. Between the two, gravity. Just gravity, pulling water down through fired earth at the pace of 1 to 3 liters an hour. In plain living communities across North America, communities that ran cisterns and spring boxes and gravity-fed systems long after the rest of the world handed their water independence to utility companies, setups like this one never disappeared. Not because these communities were backward, because they were paying attention to something the rest of us quietly stopped noticing. And what is happening inside that clay is not complicated. It just looks like it should be. The pot is fired from clay mixed with something organic, sawdust or rice husks, material that burns away in the kiln and leaves behind a network of microscopic gaps. Those gaps run roughly 0.6 to 3 microns wide. Most bacteria measure between 0.5 and 5 microns, which means most bacteria are simply too big to pass. They are stopped by geometry, not chemistry. Then comes the second layer. Colloidal silver painted into the surface of the clay releases ions that break down the cell walls of anything small enough to get through the pores. What the geometry misses, the silver kills. In 2008, a study published in Environmental Science and Technology by Oyanadel, Craver, and Smith characterized the mechanism directly, showing over 97% bacterial rejection documented in peer-reviewed research. Not chemistry, developed in a lab behind a patent wall, not a corporation's proprietary system. Physics and biology, expressed in baked earth, the same baked earth human beings have been working with for thousands of years. Stay with me, because this is where it changes. In 1827, a pottery on the banks of the Thames in London began producing ceramic water filters. The man behind it was John Dalton. The target was cholera, a disease killing people in waves across cities that drew drinking water from the same rivers they used as sewers. By 1835, Queen Victoria had commissioned a Dalton filter for the royal household, a queen, using a clay-based ceramic filter, in her kitchen in 1835. This was not fringe knowledge. This was not folk medicine passed around in back rooms. This was the recognized, respected, royally endorsed solution to contaminated water. In 1892, during the cholera epidemic that swept through Hamburg, another ceramic filter, the Birkefeld, made from diatomaceous earth, was validated in real crisis conditions. Ceramic filtration was the standard. It was normal. It was trusted by institutions, governments, and heads of state. So what happened between 1835 and your kitchen right now? There is a date, a specific date in a specific American city where the path quietly forked, and the fork that led back to a clay pot on a shelf got slowly, steadily overgrown. September 26th, 1908, Jersey City, New Jersey. That was the day the Boonton Reservoir became the first continuously chlorinated municipal water supply in the United States. The engineer behind it was Dr. John L. Leal. The intent was real, and the results were real. Typhoid rates collapsed, waterborne death dropped sharply, and cities across the country moved fast to replicate what Jersey City had done. By 1918, more than 1,000 North American cities were chlorinating their water. By 1941, according to M. Baker's documented figures, 85% of American water treatment plants were running on chlorine. Within a single generation, the infrastructure of centralized water treatment had spread to nearly every corner of the country, and the home filter market went quiet almost overnight. Not banned, not disproven, not declared unsafe, just quietly made to feel pointless. Why treat your own water when the pipe already does it? Why keep a clay pot on a shelf when the city guarantees clean water at the tap? The skill of managing your own household water, filtering it, treating it, taking responsibility for it, did not disappear because it failed. It disappeared because a system arrived that made it feel unnecessary. And within a generation, most Americans had outsourced the one thing they cannot survive without. This is where the story gets sharper, because the knowledge did not die. It went somewhere else. And what it became, and who tried to bring it back, is the part of this that took me the longest to find. September 26, 1908, did not end the story of the clay pot. It just pushed it underground. In 1981, in Guatemala City, a chemist named Dr. Fernando Mazariegos sat down with a problem that most of the developed world had decided was already solved. Rural communities across Central America were dying from waterborne disease, not slowly, in waves, and the solutions being offered, chemical treatment systems, municipal infrastructure, and expensive imported technology, were not reaching them. So Mazariegos went back to clay. He refined the colloidal silver ceramic pot filter, documented the mechanism, and tested it in the field. In 1982, the Latin American Institute of Water Engineers gave his design their top prize. A field study involving more than 500 families showed a 50% reduction in diarrhea incidents. The system worked. It was cheap. It required no electricity, no replacement cartridge, and no supply chain. The Inter-American Development Bank had funded the research. The University of Pittsburgh documented the results. Real institutions, real data, real families drinking clean water from a $4 pot. Almost nobody outside humanitarian circles heard about it. Here is the part that landed hardest for me. There was a man named Ron Rivera. He worked with an organization called Potters for Peace, and starting in the late 1990s, he made it his life's work to spread this filter to every corner of the world that needed it. He traveled, he trained local potters, he set up micro-enterprises, small factories where communities could produce their own filters from local clay for their own people, at a price their own people could afford. He built factory after factory, country after country. After Hurricane Mitch devastated Central America in 1998, Potters for Peace distributed over 5,000 filters in Nicaragua alone within 6 months. Ron Rivera kept going. 30 countries, 30 factories. On September 3rd, 2008, he died in Managua, Nicaragua. He had contracted falciparum malaria while setting up factory number 30 in Nigeria. He never took the medication. He never stopped moving long enough to take care of himself. By the time he died, those factories had produced over 300,000 filters, reaching an estimated 1.5 million people. He died spreading free knowledge. Let that sit for a moment. A man gave his life to distribute an open source $4 water filter that required no patent, no corporation, no subscription model, and the developed world, the world with the money and the media and the infrastructure to scale this overnight, looked the other way. This is where the anger should sharpen into something useful. Because the question is not whether the filter works. That question has been answered. The CDC cited the field data. The WHO distributed the design through international relief networks. MIT researchers studied it. The University of Virginia built on Mazariegos' original work to develop the Maddie Drop, a silver ceramic tablet that treats roughly 7,000 liters per year at a cost of fractions of a cent per liter, later NSF certified, UNICEF deployed it. Oxfam deployed it. Doctors Without Borders deployed it in crisis zones on multiple continents. The design has been validated by more institutional names than most household products will ever see. And it has no patent, no company owns it, no corporation controls the supply chain, there is no subscription, there is no cartridge to replace on a quarterly billing cycle, there is no profit in a pot that costs $4 last 2 years and can be made from local clay by a local potter in a local community. Notice what happens next when something has no profit model. It stays in the humanitarian category. It gets filed under emergency relief. It gets handed to communities in crisis and never quite makes it back to the ordinary household in the country that could most afford to ignore it. Not because it does not work, not because regulators blocked it, because nobody owns it. And in the modern economy, the things nobody owns tend not to get a marketing budget. Now, go back to the number I gave you at the beginning, 2,185. That is how many years ago the Maya engineers at Tikal, Guatemala, were already running drinking water through a porous mineral matrix, zeolite, and coarse crystalline quartz designed to filter contaminants from the Corriental Reservoir. This was not accidental geology, it was engineered. Specific minerals, sourced from 18 miles away, specific pore characteristics, specific placement in the water system. This was published in 2020 in scientific reports by Dr. Kenneth Barnett Tankersley and his team at the University of Cincinnati, peer-reviewed, documented, 2,000 years before John Dalton filed his first filter in London, 2,000 years before Fernando Mazariegos won his prize in Guatemala City. The Maya had already solved this problem. In clay and mineral and gravity and time, the knowledge did not begin in 1827, it did not begin in 1981, it was always there. It just kept getting buried. By cholera panics that created centralized systems. By utility infrastructure that made household skill feel obsolete. By an economy that has no use for solutions it cannot monetize. Every generation, the same pattern. The knowledge surfaces. It works. And then something larger and more profitable arrives and the pot goes back on the shelf. Not destroyed, not disproven, just quietly made to feel like it belongs to someone else's world. Here's what I want you to take from this. That pot works in your house, your shed, a cabin, a quarter-acre property with a well you don't fully trust, a rainwater tank, any situation where you want clean drinking water and you do not want your access to it controlled by a utility company, a bottled water corporation, or a supply chain that breaks the moment the storm hits. A replacement filter element costs $4 to $6. A full unit with a sealed receptacle and tap runs $15 to $25. The lifespan is roughly 2 years. The cost per liter is fractions of a cent. Your bottled water costs more than $1 per gallon, and the price has not stopped climbing. One honest note: the ceramic pot filter does not remove viruses, and it does not remove dissolved chemicals or heavy metals without a carbon layer added to the system. For pathogen-heavy water from wells, rivers, or compromised sources, it is transformative. Know what your water source carries, and match the tool to the need. You are the kind of person who stopped on a $4 pot when the rest of the scroll kept moving. That instinct is right. Maya engineers, a London pottery with a royal warrant, a Guatemalan chemist who won an engineering prize, a man who died in the field building his 30th factory, and plain living communities across 4 continents that never handed their water to anyone else, all of them pointing at the same fired clay vessel, all of them saying the same thing. You do not need permission to filter your own water. You never did. If you have a well, a rainwater tank, or a water source you do not fully trust, this week look into a ceramic pot filter. The design is open source. The instructions are free. The knowledge survived. It always does. Tell me in the comments, do you still control your own water supply, or did you hand that over without realizing it? because the next buried system we are looking at is older than this one, simpler. And the reason it disappeared from ordinary life is even harder to explain away. See you there.